What's going on, everybody? Just wanted to quickly throw out my next video, highlighting, just giving some thoughts on this last week's Eagles game. This past week, the Eagles played the Washington Redskins in Washington, or in D.C., I should say. And they lost to the Redskins by a final score of 27-20. This was a really messy game again for the Eagles. They had just come off a loss the previous week to the Detroit Lions, which was their first loss of the season, and also the first game in which they had a turnover, where they had two turnovers to kind of end out the game, with Ryan Matthews fumbling with like 2 minutes left to go, put the Lions in field position to get the field goal to take the, what was the final score? 23-22? I can't remember. Anyway, they beat us by like 1 or 2 points. But anyway, this last week we played Washington Redskins, and it was a completely messy game from the get-go. Our offense, the Eagles' offense, spent extremely little time on the field the first half. I think they may have had 1 or 2 drives the entire first half offensively. And defensively, the defense decided not to show up for the first part of the game again. The Eagles received the ball first. They can't move it. Punt. Washington takes a slow, time-consuming drive down the field. I don't know if they scored on their first series. I wasn't able to watch the game live at home. I had to record it and watch it later in the evening. And I can't remember if Washington scored on their first drive or not. But point being, the Eagles found themselves in a hole really quickly again. And it's something that has got to change. The defense that we have is capable of playing a hell of a lot better than they've been playing the last 2 weeks. We saw it the first 3 weeks. A dominant defense the first 3 weeks of the season. Smothering running backs, smothering or at least pressuring quarterbacks. Against Pittsburgh, absolutely just denying passes everywhere, stopping D'Angelo Williams everywhere. Where is that defense? It's fallen asleep the last 2 games. I don't know if it's because they're traveling and they're away games or what it is, but it does not get any easier this coming week when the extremely accurate Sam Bradford comes back to town with his new team, the Minnesota Vikings. It's not going to get any easier this week. The defense has got to show up and make a stand this week. If the Eagles have any hope, if the Eagles want any hope of winning this game, the defense must keep Minnesota from scoring above about 20 points. If we can keep Minnesota 20 points or below, keep it, low scoring affair, let Carson Wentz do a little bit of, work some of his magic that we saw early in the year. If we can keep ourselves in the game at the end of the game, we stand a chance. But the defense has got to show up this week. So anyway, talk about this game last week. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about. The score started going up. Defensively, we scored 1 touchdown on a pick six. Was it Jenkins that scored the pick six? I think it was Jenkins. Scored on a pick six. And then Smallwood for our running back. One of our running backs. Smallwood was able to take back an 86-yard kickoff return. Now, granted, it was due to a penalty. Excuse me, it was due to a penalty that Washington had committed after scoring a touchdown that moved them back. So, I think Smallwood caught the ball at like the 25 or 30 yard line. Well, if it was an 86-yard return, it would have been, he would have caught it at, the 14-yard line? So maybe not quite as far up as I thought, but still well out of the end zone. So he had a good jump, got the score, and then we end up, getting the pick six to tie it at 14. Tied at 14. The problem was when we go into halftime, coming out of halftime, Washington was going to receive the ball first. And the defense just didn't stop them. They get a couple more scores in there. And the Eagles, when the Eagles lose games, especially in the last few years, it's due to the fact they dig themselves into a hole. It's not they get up and then collapse. It's that they dig themselves into a hole that becomes too much of a hole to try and get out of with the time that's left. And that's exactly what happened this past week. They got too far in a hole. They dug themselves out to get the tie game. Then they dug themselves too far, in the hole by letting Washington score again, and then just not being able to get points on the board. I saw Carson Wentz working some of his magic again. He played some really, really good football. He was under pressure most of the day, was able to make some great moves, keep his eyes downfield, make some good throws. We just couldn't advance the ball consistently and get the ball into the end zone. And if the Eagles are going to be competitive this year, if the Eagles want any hope of really, seeing the possibility of getting into the playoffs, they're going to have to start waking up defensively. The way I see it, offensively, we've got a decent offensive line. We've got a decent running back core. We need some help at receiver, but the only optimistic view I have, or the one thing I do like about our offense, is that Doug Peterson is using them to the strength. Short passes, coupled with some strong running game. That's the type of football that's going to win games for the Eagles. It's the only way they're going to win. And then on the flip side, the defense has got to show up every game. We cannot allow teams to run the score up early. We need to get them into the second or third quarter with not scoring very many points. Get their offenses worn out. Get their defenses worn out. Really work them, and really work the opponents, tire them out. But you've got to keep the pressure up. Jim Schwartz, you've got the defense you've put together and the schemes that you've put together. I think it's some of the best defense we've seen since Jimmy Johnson, and I'm excited for it. The reason I'm not excited is because the better defense he's able to put together, that means he's got a real shot at getting a head coaching offer after this year. And I don't want to see Jim Schwartz go anywhere. So, but focusing on this year, he's got me excited because I'm seeing flashes of greatness with defense. The last 2 weeks has just been real stagnant. We need to keep the defense up. We need to not get ourselves dug into a hole. So this coming week, this video is kind of coming late in the week. It's the middle of the week already. But anyway, the week coming up, we dive into probably what I'm going to consider to be our toughest challenge left, the Minnesota Vikings. You look ahead, we've got the Vikings, we've got the Packers, we've got the Bengals, we've got Seattle. Seattle's another one I've got my eye on because we got to fly all the way across the country to get to the game. I mean, it's out in Seattle. But Minnesota's the really only one that I'm deathly afraid of left. Everyone else I think we can be competitive with. Dallas is starting to look really nasty. So if our defense can show up every week and give us a chance to be in the game offensively, I think we can score and be competitive with the teams we have left. So this past week, just there isn't much to say. It was ugly. Penalties, I think we had 10 or 12, maybe it was about 13 penalties again. I gotta say, during the Detroit Lions game, it was completely lopsided. Completely lopsided, the calling. Some of them may have been justified, but I think it was still unfairly lopsided in the Detroit game. And again, we're seeing some lopsided calls in the Washington game. Not as bad, but again, some lopsided calls. And I think a couple things have to happen. One, obviously the Eagles have to work on not shooting themselves in the foot in the worst possible times, because that's when the penalties are coming, when we're converting a third down and then there's a holding penalty. Those moments we cannot continue to allow penalties to kill us. But I also think we have to just hold out hope that the officiating is going to, get a little bit better, because it has been a little bit wishy-washy the last couple weeks. So those are the thoughts on the game this past week. Again, I think we can be competitive against Minnesota. I think we can. The key, I think, to keeping pace with Minnesota is to have the defense be the leader of this game. Our defense has to set the tone, keep them punting early in the game, get us to get some points on the board like we did with Pittsburgh, make them work to catch back up. And then I think we're able, if we can keep the game low scoring until the end, it keeps us alive. And if we keep ourselves in the game, I think we can compete with anybody. So that's my thoughts from last week. This upcoming week, it's going to be tough. And to the fella I called out last week, EDP, I haven't had a chance to look at any of your videos this week. I've been swamped at work, been running around doing all this stuff. So I'm going to try and catch up and watch your videos. To those who've commented on my last video about, I just want views, I just, trying to be like him. Trust me, I don't want to be like EDP. I love being the fan that I am here today, being the optimistic, rooting for my team, not hating on my team. I have the same frustrations he does. But with that being said, I won't ever lose faith in my team. Every week, optimistic, thinking that we can compete. Listen, I agree that some of the guys on our team are not the highest quality players at their position, but they've become professional football players, and if Doug Peterson uses them to their strengths, we can compete. That's the key, the nice balance between coaching, execution, and scheming. So with that being said, those are my thoughts. EDP, I'm going to check out your videos from this past week. I know that there's been a few, so I'll check them out, see what you had to say, and if there's anything I disagree with or something, maybe I'll comment. But otherwise, I'm hoping you're way out there in California still rooting for this team, and that you don't hate being an Eagles fan. That was my big riff with you last week, was saying how you hate this team, hate being an Eagles fan. But anyway, fast forward to this week, Minnesota coming to town Sunday. Is it a 1 o'clock game? I think it's a 1 o'clock game. Let me take a look here real quick. Pull up my Eagle app. Yep, it's a 1 o'clock game on Fox. 5-0 Vikings coming to town for our 3-2 Eagles. Again, game plan, hard defense early on, keep the game close, and at the end we might have a shot at actually pulling this out. So anyway, with that being said, thanks for watching, and fly Eagles fly.